Thank you, Mr. President. It is oftentimes there is a price to be paid in the legislative process for insisting on telling the truth. But sometimes it's very important that the people understand what's going on when it comes to an issue that's very important to them. I was talking with my brother Patrick a couple of weeks ago about the unlikely success of Donald Trump in the presidential campaign, and one of the things he said to me as a reason for his success, he said, "Josh, the people are on to the games being played by politicians, and they're tired of that. And they will look anywhere for someone who will upend the system and turn over the tables." Well, I rise today to talk about a piece of legislation called the Pastor Protection Act. The best thing I can say about that piece of legislation is the name. If we were to be accurate about what the bill is really intended to do, we would call it the Politician Protection Act. The protection that is being afforded in this proposed piece of legislation is not meaningful. To the extent that it provides any protection at all, it designates a class of people, and it says that that class of people will have greater First Amendment protection than the rest of us. As someone far more eloquent than I put it, so that it protects the shepherds while not protecting the sheep. One section of the bill, Section 3, actually says that to receive the protection of the legislation, that you have to have a 501c3 status. So we're actually deferring decisions on the protection of religious freedom to the Internal Revenue Service. And it comes from a different notion of what we're trying to do here when we talk about religious freedom. People talk about freedom of worship. I was in a meeting yesterday at the Religious Freedom Day where a gentleman from Cuba talked about how they had freedom of worship. There were churches, there were designated places you could go for your religious activities. But if you said or did anything outside the walls of that church, you'd be subject to arrest. That's freedom of worship. What we've been talking about for the last 2 years is free exercise. Free exercise for everyone. Free exercise for all 10 million Georgians. So if that's true, if what I've said about this bill is true, then why is it racing through the legislative process at warp speed? And the answer would be that those who originally opposed any effort to move this issue forward now recognize that something must be done. The people are demanding that something be done. And so now we have a bill that is tailor-made for direct mail pieces. It's tailor-made for people going back home to campaign. But it does not one thing to protect religious freedom and to protect the people who are demanding that we act. As I said before, the best thing about that piece of legislation is its name. There's a simple solution to the present and very real assault on religious freedom. It is to pass one of the 3 measures that would give Georgia the Religious Freedom Restoration Act standard, and to pass the First Amendment Defense Act. But to think that the people of this state are going to be bamboozled and fooled and led astray by passing a piece of legislation with a name that sounds attractive is the height of political arrogance. And it is why we are seeing what we're seeing all over this country. There is a crisis of confidence in government, and we ought to be honest with the people. If you don't think this is an issue, if you don't think we should act on it, then say so. but don't try a cheap political trick. Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the well.